An unexpected crisis is shaking the foundations of the U.S. military industry, and the reason comes from the south, Mexico. It all started because of a fierce and, according to Mexicans, deeply unfair dispute. The National Chamber of the Iron and Steel Industry of Mexico announced that, in the face of unfair competition and heavy taxes imposed by Washington, the country may close its doors to steel products from the United States. What's more, if there is no quick agreement, Mexico will take tough measures that could completely change the game. In response to Donald Trump's tariffs on Mexican steel and aluminum,
President Claudia Sheinbaum has been blunt. If the Americans don't back down, Mexico will completely cut off exports of these metals to the United States.
This means that the largest buyer of Mexican steel could, in a matter of days, be left without essential supplies for its own defense. The warning has been given. Without Mexican steel, weapons prices in the United States could skyrocket like never before.
Sheinbaum was clear that Mexico has long prioritized the United States as its primary partner, but that has changed. The United States is not the only one that wants what we produce. We have many other partners willing to buy our steel and aluminum, she said. This change in attitude could have a devastating impact on the American military industry, which consumes millions of tons of metal every year to manufacture tanks, fighter jets, warships, and ammunition. The problem is that the United States does not produce even a third of the aluminum it consumes, and building new smelters in the country would require years of investment and billions of dollars. Meanwhile, crucial projects are beginning to be threatened. The M1 Abrams tank, for example, uses special high-strength steel for its armor, and Mexico supplies plates and sheets for about 40% of these vehicles. Cutting off that supply is like shutting down part of the production line.
Mexicans say they have always competed on equal terms when given the chance. We win contracts because we are good at what we do. We just want a fair competition, said one industry representative. But now, with the new taxes, Mexican companies are being blocked, and the first to feel the impact will be Americans themselves. One of the biggest immediate losses would be the F-35 fighter jet project. This year, 150 planes were planned, but the rising cost of aluminum and steel could delay deliveries and inflate prices. Each plane could become up to $5 million more expensive, and this is the most expensive plane in the world. If prices rise even further, it may simply not be worth continuing to produce them. The F-35, along with the F-22, relies heavily on Mexican steel for various parts of its structure, fuselage, wings, and even internal components. If that supply is cut off, the US will have to find other suppliers, likely more expensive and farther away. This delays everything, and the longer it takes, the more the US military capabilities will be affected. Some experts are already warning that if these tariffs last long, the country may be forced to reduce its aircraft fleet. The crisis doesn't stop there. It is estimated that without Mexican steel, the costs of the entire US defense industry could rise by up to 15%. This directly affects the production of tanks, planes, submarines, ships, and even projectiles. Mexico supplies about a quarter of all the materials used in these equipment. With the interruption, American factories will start to run out of raw materials. In fact, 2 Gerald Ford-class aircraft carriers currently under construction could be delayed by up to 9 months. In the midst of a trade war with China, the US risks losing its power at sea, while a single Chinese shipyard already builds more ships per year than all US shipyards combined. And it doesn't stop there. Mexican steel is also used to make ammunition, such as artillery shells. This has caused prices in US gun stores to start rising. Many Americans, fearful of a possible shortage, are rushing to buy ammunition while they can still find it. The mood is one of uncertainty and fear. The problem also affects international contracts. Sales of weapons such as shotguns, missiles, and other equipment could be cancelled, and this directly threatens about 50,000 jobs in states such as Texas and California. For every job in US steel mills, there are about 80 other jobs that depend on imported steel, including Mexican steel. The losses from military contracts alone could reach $60 billion, and that's not all. Many of the business leaders who previously supported Trump are reconsidering their support, especially if the losses continue to mount until the end of the year. Some have even said that the new taxes could be considered an act of economic warfare. Meanwhile, US allies, such as NATO members, are beginning to feel the impact of the delays. Many of these countries depend on the United States to keep their weapons stockpiles stocked, including specific ammunition, such as the 155 mm round. In light of this, The US military has announced additional investments of millions of dollars to try to increase domestic production. Steel mills in the United States are working at a rapid pace with extra shifts, but they still can't keep up with demand. The truth is that the United States does not have enough capacity to feed its own war industry. In Scranton, Pennsylvania, for example, the pressure on factories that produce forged steel for ammunition is very high. In the face of urgency, military contractors are considering importing metals from countries like Vietnam and South Korea. The problem? The cost would be 20% higher, and the delivery time could be as long as 3 months. Meanwhile, President Trump wants major American steelmakers to absorb Mexican companies like Vilacero and Altos Hornos. It's an attempt to forcibly internalize production. But analysts say this strategy is backfiring. The steel tax is unlikely to last long because it hurts the US more than it helps. It undermines American competitiveness and puts upward pressure on domestic costs. And contrary to what Trump had hoped, the taxes are not destroying Mexican industry. They are strengthening it. With more competitive prices, Mexican steel is being redirected to other industries, including those that export finished products to the US. In other words, even with the barriers, Mexican steel continues to arrive on US soil, but hidden inside cars, refrigerators, stoves, and even microwaves.
Claudia Sheinbaum, the president of Mexico, explained that the country is experiencing a real boom in the real estate sector, with a growing demand for residential, commercial, and industrial construction in several regions of the country. This requires a lot of steel, especially to support the fast pace of construction in expanding cities such as Monterrey, Guadalajara, and Mexico City itself. In view of this, Sheinbaum stated that the priority now is to supply the domestic market and ensure the sustainable development of the country. At the same time, Mexico is investing heavily in its own defense, modernizing military factories and laboratories with cutting-edge technology. The president highlighted that local ammunition production has not only increased in quantity, but also in quality, and is now comparable to the standards of the best industries in the world, such as those in Belgium, Germany, and the United States. The goal, according to her, is to make Mexico self-sufficient in defense and strategic infrastructure.
In light of this scenario of growth and internal strengthening, the United States has requested an urgent meeting to discuss the suspension of trade taxes. The tariffs have caused growing tension between the two sides of the border, with direct impacts on key sectors such as construction, the automotive industry, and defense.
However, the Mexican president has made it clear that if the dialogue fails and Washington insists on maintaining aggressive trade barriers, Mexico is ready to react firmly. The threat is clear. The country will launch an all-out economic offensive, completely blocking the export of strategic materials such as steel, iron, copper, and aluminum to the United States.
This measure would have severe consequences and could partially paralyze the American defense industry, especially at a critical time of high global demand for weapons, ongoing regional conflicts, and escalating international tensions.
The gesture would be not only economic but also political, symbolizing a change in Mexico's stance towards its powerful neighbor to the north.
The tension is only increasing. The question everyone is asking now is, who will blink first?